A lot of people are not familiar with William Norman Grigg and his archive that we do have provided for people. What is something that William Grigg provided that has gone underappreciated in the freedom movement?
Oh, well, everything he ever wrote, unfortunately, which is not to say that it was unappreciated. It's just it would be impossible for it to be appreciated as much as it deserves to be. Will Grigg was really our brightest and most eloquent speaker and writer in the libertarian movement. He was the former editor of the John Birch Society's magazine, The New American, and had been, a bit more of a kind of a right patriot, populist movement conspiracist type in the 1990s. And then in the Bush years, like a lot of libertarians and kind of right-leaning anti-government types, he just got really good, and he just stayed that way. Birchers got rid of him because he wouldn't support their police state on the border, which was a big fad in 2006, led by Lou Dobbs on CNN and all of that. And they figured that would be a good moneymaker to be a position for them to take, and would sacrifice their principles for those dollars. And so they showed him the door since he wouldn't go along with that, which was fine by me because, frankly, that was always just a terrible brand name to be stuck to the name William Norman Grigg. Even though, John Birch was just a missionary who was murdered by some Chinese communists. And this guy, Robert Welch, named his society after the guy. And Robert Welch has been dead for, I don't know, forever. And, the Birchers in general, the population, I don't know about all the leadership and everyone who ever wrote for them, although they have some great guys who have written for them in the past for sure. But their membership are basically good American Christian constitutionalist conservative types. People kind of portray them as very, very far right and racist and that kind of thing. That was never my experience with them. They're certainly conservative on social issues, but so were a lot of people. But they were not like so far to the right that they, ever advocated anything negative along those lines or anything like that. But anyway, once he was free of them and their reputation, then he just got so good. And the only negative thing I could say, Keith, was that he became so good on writing about the police state and writing about, domestic American policing and bad trials, innocent people in prison and violent police raids on innocent family homes and these things. He was just the best in the world at that. But it was at the expense of him writing about every other thing. And he really was such a brilliant genius. He could comment on just anything under the sun. And I swear to God, like, this is a guy, and I've known other people like this in my life. There's such a thing as this. It's just, there's people like this who just have absolute instant recall of every vocabulary word they've ever learned in any context. And this guy just had a vocabulary 100 times the size of any of the rest of us. He's just brilliant. And he knew everything about the history of everything that just ever happened. So you could say, man, this thing going on right now in Ramadi is so concerning for the following reasons. And he would go, this is just like the Battle of Warsaw in 1121. And then he'd tell you about some ancient battle in the context of the thing. And it's a perfect analogy. Of course, it fits perfectly. He's not just bragging. He just came up with that because it's actually the best metaphor to use in this example. Or what? He's just brilliant. He's as brilliant as anybody could be. And so then, I'm very proud to say that he was a founding member of the Libertarian Institute. It was me and him and Sheldon Richman were the original three that founded the thing. And then, I regret to say he died only about half a year later in the spring. In fact, what's the date?
Today's April 11th.
Tomorrow is the anniversary of his death, Keith.
Oy vey. Rest in peace.
Yeah. He died, he's 52 years old. And it's just, it's a crime, first and foremost, against his family, of course, that he died at such a young age. But for all of us, it's just, that whole thing. I guess I always think this whenever anybody dies, I guess, they're like, it ain't fair that their brain got turned off permanently just because their body couldn't hack it anymore for whatever reason, like that sucks. Here's this guy who's got the most brilliant brain ever that somehow ought to have lasted forever. And now it's just gone. You can't replicate that shit with a computer, right? There's just no such thing as Will Grigg ever again. It sucks. It's such a loss. It's just unbelievable. It's the same with Justin, except Justin was such a prickly jerk. He wouldn't even mind me saying so. But Will Grigg was just the most decent and kindest man. You know, sucks. Anyway, we published a book of his after he died, called No Quarter, which is a collection of his writings from, I'm pretty sure, I guess 2001 on, and it's just the best it's so great. I mean, I couldn't say enough about it. I mean, my warning, I guess, is that it'll ruin you. It's the most horrible thing. The stuff that he writes about in there, about what our government does to people, it is just incredible and just astounding. Like you never seen anything like it before, and for the right wingers and the thin blue line, flag wavers in your life, this is the solution to their problem. You could take, that guy that goes around, there's more than one, but there's the guy who's really famous for going around training cops that they should kill anyone at a moment's notice because your life is on the line and they're 7 feet away. They can kill you in one instant. So you should just blow them away first and all these things. I bet you could make an anarchist out of that guy if somehow you could make him read this book. This is the thing. You know how you sometimes read a book and you go, man, if only everyone was reading the same thing as me right now, we'd live in a different world tomorrow. This is like that. It's really one of those. It's the greatest thing ever. I'm sorry, you shouldn't ask me such a broad question. I don't remember what it was. Something about him. I like Will Grigg. I like Will Grigg so much, man.
I was just asking about his contributions. What I love about the book is he really brings to life the anger that you should have. So if you've
and one more thing, I'm sorry, Keith, before I forget, because I will forget it. But we have his entire archive. We collected PDFs of his newspaper articles from 1990. We got as much as we could ever salvage from the John Birch Society site, and everything he ever wrote at his blog Pro Libertate. Plus we have 2 or 3 different versions of his radio show, the Liberty Minute and whatever all it was. I forgot it all now. But it's all there in the Will Grigg archive on the right-hand margin there. Like everything. As far as I know, it's everything he ever wrote that we could get our hands on, which is virtually everything. Anybody listening to this who's a Will Grigg fan who has something you think we may have missed, Scott at scotthorton.org, and please let me have it. But anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just I lose my train of thought so quickly. If I didn't say that, I might have not remembered again.
Of course. Yeah, Will Grigg is the best previously living example of attacking the right from the right. This is where I got the idea to go on a show in Tucson, Arizona, and go through the points of Thomas Aquinas as far as whether or not America should get involved in the war in Ukraine, let alone Syria and many other nations. You're taking their own principles and applying them consistently. Another thing that I love about this one is that if you've intellectually come to the idea that, yes, the non-aggression principle is legitimate, you don't really get angry until you see how much evil it really plays in your everyday life, the trauma that state enforcers cause. You might think of cops as sort of passively just enacting government edicts, but it's so much more than that. And Will Grigg really brings that to life. Absolutely.
And by the way, let me say real quick here to you that from the very beginning, man, he was so perfect on the war on terrorism. And the New American Magazine, the first issue of the New American Magazine after September 11th was just about how much we love cops and firefighters. What heroes, right? That was it. That was the whole issue. The next one was about the history of Al-Qaeda and Egyptian Islamic Jihad terrorism in the United States, the first World Trade Center attack, and all the things leading up to September 11th, Khobar, and all the rest, and asking the question, the very second issue and the third issue too, could we have prevented the attack? How could the CIA and State Department have let these men into the country? How could the FBI not have buttoned them up? That was in the first and the second, the second and third issues after September 11th. And he's the one, you hear me quote this all the time, that it's Will Grigg quoting Saul Alinsky. And this is long before Obama made Alinsky famous, when years later. He quotes Saul Alinsky, page 75 of Rules for Radicals, that in asymmetric political action, including terrorism, the action is in the reaction of the opposition. So put yourself in the shoes of bin Laden and his handful of bandits. How the hell are they going to take on the United States of America? USA, #1 world superpower, yellow ribbon and all. Well, the answer is get us to blow our own brains out. Give our government an opportunity to exploit to the ends of the earth till our empire completely buries itself in the graveyards of Afghanistan. That's what it's all about. They're trying to jerk our chain. They're trying to get something stupid. Will Grigg wrote that in the New American Magazine in November 2001. And you just mentioned St. Thomas is what reminded me of this. Is he went right there in the I'm saying it's the second or the third issue, probably the second issue. After September 11th, he went through the just war theory. There's 14 planks of the just war theory, and you can't have a war unless you got all 14. And he said we flunk here on like 6 things. There's no way you could justify invading Afghanistan. Now, again, this is the John Birch Society's magazine, and whatever you think about them, there's just and their beliefs about whatever issues. There's just no question. These are the most George Washingtonian, red, white, and blue, Republican, American, patriot, conservative, military veteran types in the country. Okay? There's just nothing, even if you don't like their patriotism, even, you're like a liberal Democrat and you just despise even the name. You probably don't know anything about them, but anyway, despise the name. You still can't deny they believe they're patriots. They love George Washington for real. They're dedicated to the Constitution, like in the oath they took to it. So many of them being veterans of the Army and that kind of thing. Unlike other federal government employees, don't give a damn about that. Veterans really do care about stuff like that. So the fact that they were saying, nope, we're anti-war, 3,000 killed, surprise attack, our military command headquarters hit, that still is not enough to justify war. You have to show me that you have no other option. Because St. Thomas says otherwise, God wouldn't stand for it. And that's in November of 01. Which, if, God, was all that so instructive for me. And I was so grateful that I already knew about him and read him and all of that stuff at the time. But boy, does it also go to show no one else had any excuse at all. Here are the most conservative patriots in America, but instead of acting like little crybabies and throwing a temper tantrum, they acted like grown-ups, and they thought this through. They knew what they were talking about, and they made the right choices. Let's hear all the people who say the Birchers are the worst people in the world confront that issue, that they were right about the last 20 years before it started, and they stayed good on it the whole time. Where were all these people? Hell, you had, 2/3 of Democrat voters of America support George Bush's aggressive war in Iraq. But the John Birchers knew better. So, I hope people have fun living with that. But anyway, Will Grigg was the very best one of us ever. Now I'll be quiet. Thank you.
For $25 in a donation, you can pick up a digital copy of any of our books. For $50, you can get a physical copy. For a $100 donation, you can get a physical copy of any of our books and your own Libertarian Institute mug. Great conversation starters.